Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a few months since my last video build, and it has been a hectic few months. I've been dealing with some family issues. My mom has cancer, my brother has a brain tumor, and then plus Doge tried to cut my office, so it's been crazy, but I'm glad to be modeling again, and I'm going to start off with my standard procedure of priming. So here I'm using black primer, and then I'm going to white base. Onto the black and white technique. Now, I am not an armor modeler, so I'm not really sure if I'm doing this correctly. I probably built 3 armor models total, but I really liked this technique, so I wanted to try it out. It looked really cool, and I'm happy with the results. So, overall, plus. On to the main color. For this build I'm using Vallejo NATO green, and I've thinned it slightly because I wanted to create a different effect on top of the vehicle and underneath the vehicle. So on top I lightened it by adding in 10% white, and it gave a really nice tone. Now I will say that it doesn't look like the NATO green that I saw on pictures, but once I put a flat coat on, it started to match up with the NATO green on pictures versus what it's looking now. It's kind of looking like almost a lime green. So I do understand that it looks different than the normal NATO green color. I will say that overall this kit is a very nice kit, but it is an older kit. The fit is still good, but it's missing pedals. Tamiya completely forgot about them, so something to keep in mind. So, as I mentioned on the underside, I'm going to darken the green a little bit just to create a different tone. So I added in a 10% black into the green to give it a darker hue on the bottom, just to change things around and make it more vivid of a build. I'll also say that kits like these, while they're great, the little things really start adding up. There's a lot of effort putting into, the gas can and the axe and the shovel, so don't think these small little kits are as quick as you might want them to be. In painting the NATO black, I decided to do freehand camo, and the reason for this is, in the book that I have on the M151a2, it doesn't seem like there was a standard NATO camo pattern for this particular vehicle, and it seems like it was very random. So I decided to just come up with my own variation, and thus I decided to do it by freehand. And if you thin your paint and get your PSI good and get close to the model, you can get really nice tight lines. And then once you've established the paint line, you come in and fill it in, and you got your camo. So it's pretty easy if you just control your trigger motion a little bit, make sure your paint is thin, make sure you're pretty close to the surface. You can, if you notice in the video, I'm about maybe 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters away from the surface doing this. Really like the NATO camo scheme on the pretty much all the NATO vehicles, to be honest. I think it's a really cool scheme. It's my favorite. Personally hate the single tone olive drab type of schemes on some of the vehicles that they had, so I decided I wanted to make this in a NATO camo when I got this kit. I really wanted to do more airbrushing work on this particular model, so I went back and did highlights over the NATO black using Vallejo dark gray blue, which gives it a nice used look to the black, much like I had seen in the various pictures of NATO vehicles. And I don't know how well it's coming through on screen, but it leaves a really nice finish and makes it really pop out a little bit. And the way to do highlights is to aim for the middle of the camo pattern and do small circular motions and keep the airbrush moving. Much like the NATO black, I freehanded the NATO brown. Now, once the NATO brown was done, I did add in highlights. However, I forgot to record the highlights. Another thing I want to mention here is right now the model is looking almost toy-like with the colors because the colors are vibrant. They're not military colors, they're not flat. Keep in mind the colors are going to change slightly when we add in the flat coat, and that shine from the colors is going to be reduced with the flat coat. It's going to look more like a NATO vehicle at that point. So this is not the final result here. One very cool thing about armor modeling is the abundance of weathering you can do or choose not to do. In this kit, I forgot to record it, but I've already added in a wash and a flat coat. So I wanted to dirty up the backside of the Jeep, and I'm using AK weathering pencils. I purchased them recently and I wanted to try them out. I found that the light colors are a little hard to use, but they work really well with water. So I did some chipping and then I used a slightly moistened brush to blend in some of the effects, so there was discoloration and scratches, and it turned out really nice. Time to add in some dust effects, and I'm using pigments on the flat coat, and they will stick there and create a nice dusty effect. Now, I'm not going to add in a lot of weathering to this model because in the book that I have and in pictures I saw online, the NATO version of these Jeeps were never that dirty. And in fact, you will see a lot of armor stuff is really heavily weathered, but in most cases, in real life, it's actually not that weathered at all, with the exception of wartime vehicles. And since these things didn't go to war, or at least not a NATO war, I'm going to keep it light. The main weathering that I saw on the pictures is faded paint and dust. These things got a lot of dust, whether it's in the trunk, whether it's on the sides, whether it's on the tires, but a lot of dust. And once I've added in the dust, I'm adding in pigment fixer, and it's going to hold the dust in place. Now, when you add it in pigment fixer, it's going to make it look like the pigment has disappeared, but once it's dry, it will come back and it will leave a nice dusty effect. Continuing on with the theme of dust all over the vehicle, I'm going to add in dust to the sides and the underneath. And this is kind of where I screwed up. I actually did not like the dust effect that I created on the underside of the vehicle and on the side of the vehicle. It was just not to my liking, so I had to come back in and increase that using an airbrush. And I didn't record all of the steps, but I added in streak marks, wet marks, things like that to just give the dust a little bit of life, so as just to kind of add a little bit more flair. Again, I did not see this in pictures. I did not see this in my book. I just did this kind of because I was like, I want the dust to look a little bit more lively than it is right now. So on the bottom side, I did the dry method. I added in dust, then went around with thinner to put it into place, and it looked okay, and it gave a little bit of a 3D effect when I airbrushed the dust on top. But again, wasn't happy with just the dry method here. It didn't give as much of a dusty effect as I wanted. As I mentioned previously, I wasn't happy with the dust effect on the side and underside of the vehicle, so I decided to add in some dust effects using an airbrush. And the key here is to be subtle. Dust is very subtle. It is not heavy unless you're in a desert environment potentially, but in the NATO vehicles it's really not as heavy as desert vehicles. So you want to be subtle and build up the effect. Don't blast it on. I made a mistake here where I didn't record what I did afterwards. Dust doesn't just stay in place, it moves a little bit, especially on vertical surfaces. So I created some streak marks into the dust using thinner and a brush and just going up and down, so it seems like it's being washed away by water or rain. And I added in some other effects like oil spillage on the side there, but I forgot to record that, so if you look at the following pictures you can see what I'm talking about. Here is my method of painting tires. This method works both on armored vehicles and airplanes as well. So I've already primed and painted the rubber black on the tire, and what I'm trying to do is mask so I can paint the rim. And the best way I found to do that is to take Vallejo masking liquid, thin it out, and then use it almost as a paint. The capillary action will move the liquid around the rim of the tire, and that way you get a nice beautiful mask, and all you have to do is come back around with the Vallejo masking liquid and just fill in the areas, and your tire is masked and ready to go. Now you will notice I have two wells. One well, there's water, you can't see it in the video though, because as soon as you're done masking the tire, you want to immediately wash your brush. Once Vallejo masking liquid dries in your brush, it pretty much ruins the brush. It takes lacquer thinner and a lot of cleaning to get that liquid out. So you want to clean your brush as quickly as possible. I keep saying that these vehicles were never really that dirty in the pictures that I saw and in my book, with the exception of one area, tires. There is a lot of dirt and wear tear on the tires and on the rims, and I'm guessing it's because the tires and the rims are lower to the ground, they're riding over things, shrubs are hitting them, rocks are hitting them, etc. So I wanted to weather the tires more than the rest of the vehicle. And so what I've done here is applied a gloss coat for enamel wash, and I'm using Tamiya enamel wash here. Brown is a really nice color for green camo. And once the panel liner dries, I'm going to clean up the excess and apply a flat coat. So you can see here one tire that's weathered, hopefully you can see it well, and this one I'm going to demonstrate weathering on. So I went in with chipping first using a light green pencil, and this created a nice discoloration around the green, and then I'm going to come in and deepen that chipping and that discoloration with the buff. And it created a really nice effect in my opinion. I really liked the results of this. I noticed this was mostly centered on certain areas, the protruding side of the rim, so I'm focusing mostly on that side with the buff pencils, but you can see the discoloration and you can see the chipping that resulted, and the wash creates a really nice, beautiful weathered rim. For the dust around the tires, I'm going to use the wet application of pigments, let them dry and wipe them off, and this will result in dust around the tires.